Columbus, Georgia, 2 hours south of Atlanta, a traditional southern town where some things haven't changed since the Civil War. An unlikely place to find one of Latin America's most important and most controversial military training academies. Unlikely, perhaps, but Fort Benning, Georgia, on the edge of Columbus, is now home to the U.S. Army's School of the Americas. Its motto, all for one and one for all. Its official language, Spanish, not English.
¿Qué número es este?
The school's goal, to provide training for Latin American armies allied to the United States and to maintain U.S. influence over them.
We've had experience on various battlefields around the world, and when people come to us, they want to just feed off that knowledge that we have. Basically, they come here and they want to learn U.S. doctrine.
Captain Charles Krause, one of the instructors at the school, teaches combat patrolling.
They want to learn how do we do it conventionally. They want to take that basic doctrine back to their country and adapt it to their particular situation. And that's what they can do.
Argentina, 613 graduates.
At a cost to the U.S. government of about $4 million a year, the School of the Americas has trained more than 46,000 Latin military officers since the end of World War II. At one time or another, many of the hemisphere's most powerful generals received their training at the school. Men like Panama's late General Omar Torrijos. A year ago, General Paul Gorman, then Commander-in-Chief of all U.S. forces in Latin America, called the school essential to U.S. security.
This school has become a way of bringing the countries of Latin America together in a fashion that otherwise would have been impossible. So this is a strategic resource, a way of communicating the doctrine, the methods of instruction, the standards of our Army to the security forces of other nations.
Traditionally, the School of the Americas' mission was to train Latin officers to defend their countries from an external enemy. Today, with guerrilla conflict raging across Central America, Colombia, and Peru, the school's expanded, and its emphasis has changed to counterinsurgency. Last year, more than 1,000 officers from 12 different Latin countries attended courses at Fort Benning. The school taught them everything from combat operations to military intelligence to psychological warfare. Meanwhile, the number of U.S. instructors has grown to about 100, many of them Hispanics. 40 additional guest instructors come from countries throughout Latin America. U.S. Army Colonel Miguel Garcia is the school's commandant.
I think one of the characteristics of the school is its ability to expand rapidly when tasked to do so. So in that sense, the school is very flexible, very capable, and it responds to the necessities dictated by policymakers.
For officers from Latin America, training at Fort Benning is free, but the State Department carefully determines which countries receive scholarship money, and the School of the Americas enrollment clearly reflects U.S. foreign policy at any given time. Currently, Cuba, Nicaragua, Chile, Argentina, and Suriname do not have officers in training. The vast majority of students come from just one country, El Salvador. At war with Marxist guerrillas, the Salvadoran army has received well over $500 million from the Reagan administration since 1981. Today, the School of the Americas is a virtual training center for El Salvador's armed forces, in part because Georgia is safer for U.S. Army instructors than Central America. Many mid-level Salvadoran officers come to Fort Benning for a course in combat operations. The day we visited their classroom, these officers were plotting tactics and strategy for retaking a town overrun by guerrillas. Their theoretical problem: to retake the town in San Vicente province without injuring innocent civilians. Other Salvadoran officers come for engineering courses. They learned to build houses, schools, roads, and other facilities that could help improve their image among the civilian population. And young cadets from El Salvador's elite military academy come to the school for what amounts to advanced basic training. Captain Busick, a West Point graduate and a U.S. Army Ranger, is one of their instructors.
They lack some of the basic soldier skills that our basic trainees learn in the first 5 weeks that they go through a basic training program, but in the period that we train them, they will acquire and gain those basic skills and techniques.
Last month, 185 cadets finished their 24-week course. Captain Busick put them through their final test.
We were running them through the Darby Queen, which is the United States Army Ranger School obstacle course. It's 26 obstacles that test a man's confidence and his ability to work together as a team. They run in four-man teams through the obstacles of varying difficulties and varying heights above the ground, some to just test their quick mental abilities, some to test their agility, and others to test their teamwork. They are much more physically fit than our soldiers were. Their ability to run long distances was just remarkable.
The only difference between us and other institutions in the Army are simply that we teach in Spanish to a larger audience. This is particularly important, I believe, for the cadet courses, where we can influence young minds. We can help shape their thinking by providing an insight to what our culture is, what kind of things we do and how we do things, how we react in certain ways when posed with a crisis.
Then are you saying that the school, in a way, helps to extend the influence of the United States in Latin America and reinforce the influence of the United States in Latin America?
I think that it serves the national interest of the United States in that sense.
The school has long been an important instrument of U.S. foreign policy. Founded in 1946, it was located in Panama until a year and a half ago. Then, under terms of the Panama Canal treaties, its flag was furled and it moved from Fort Gulick, Panama to Fort Benning, Georgia. But there's a story behind the move. General Manuel Noriega, head of Panama's powerful defense force and himself a graduate of the school, wanted it to remain at Fort Gulick. But public opinion in Panama, led by the opposition newspaper La Prensa and civilian politicians, made that impossible. In Panama and throughout Latin America, the school has a bloody reputation. It's known as a school for dictators.
I can tell you that I was one of the people that violently opposed the school staying.
Roberto Eisenman is La Prensa's publisher. He's now a Nieman Fellow at Harvard.
I think the School of the Americas was a school for dictatorship. And I never went to class there to be able to prove that, but the track record certainly shows that. When these boys got together at the School of the Americas, I can only imagine that they talked about the way they ran their countries and oppressed their people and tortured their people and what was effective and what was not.
No, I don't think that's really a fair characterization.
Richard Millett is an expert on the military in Latin America and was recently a guest instructor at the school.
There's no evidence that an officer who went there is more likely to wind up taking over his government than one who didn't. And this is a product of domestic conditions, of the Spanish military heritage, of Latin American history, not of training at the School of the Americas. The opposite thing, the question is, has the training there done anything to make them less likely to take over their governments? And it probably hasn't done that either.
Commandant Garcia says there's been a lot of debate over whether the school should offer courses that teach respect for human rights and democratic government.
In fact, many of our Latin officers think that we don't do enough of that. And perhaps that's a real criticism. But I think we don't want to go into be compared to what other ideologies do, specifically the Marxists, where part of being trained, part of the price you pay of being trained by them in the bloc countries is to suffer a lot of ideological exposure, the virtues of the communist system or the Marxist system or like that. I think that we tend to think that democracy sells on its own values.
Now that the school is in the United States, the hope is that Latin officers will learn about democracy firsthand. The young cadets from El Salvador, for example, had an opportunity to travel extensively during their 6 months at Fort Benning. As they were packing for home, we talked to one of the cadets, Walter Zabaleta. What did you find to buy in the United States?
Clothes, electrical appliances, medicine.
What did you find most interesting?
The people, they are very interesting. The places. The people are very friendly, and they are interesting to El Salvador. And I enjoyed very much in this place.
How do you think North Americans and Salvadorans, are there differences in the way we think about things?
No, they think the same way, because they think that the democracy is the most important thing.
I suspect they get exposed more to Kmart than they do to democracy.
Professor Millett doesn't think just being at school in the United States is enough.
It establishes lines of communication, and those can be useful. It probably contributes a little to mutual comprehension, and every little bit helps. But the overall effect, I think, is much more limited than either the most ardent advocates or the most ardent detractors of the school would maintain.
The school's primary mission is to provide military training, and by all accounts, it does that very well. Its importance was underscored again last month when the cadets graduated. Among those present was General Carlos Vides Casanova, El Salvador's defense minister.
Señor Coronel Jimmy R. Moore, subcomandante del Centro de Infantería.
He told the cadets they had just finished one of the most important components of their military training. He also reminded them of their duty to respect democracy and human rights. It was a poignant message at what was a poignant ceremony. From Fort Benning, the cadets returned directly to El Salvador. Today, they're on a distant battlefield, fighting for their country and for the United States. Through them, the School of the Americas plays a key role in the Reagan administration's strategy for countering Cuban-style revolution in Central America. That strategy, to train local armies to fight local battles, to avoid another Cuba, and to help prevent another Vietnam.